Tell me how you got started.
I became interested in fashion when I was a teenager and I had aspirations to want to be a part of fashion. It was just love at first sight. I just knew right away that this was a world that I wanted to be a part of. My interest in photography didn't stem from a love of taking photos. It was just because I love fashion so much. I had this fascination with how real people would wear the clothes as opposed to just celebrities or models. Dolce Gabbana made this huge PR move where they put bloggers in the front row. One seat away from Anna Wintour, I thought there was something wrong.
I remember that exact show. Everybody was staring at you guys like, who the fuck are they?
And, there was a reason why they did that, because they wanted to make a statement. Usually celebrities are the ones that get instantly seated front row, but then to see regular people being given this opportunity to be sat in the front row. All these American editors sitting behind me, and I can only imagine what they were thinking. Who is this kid?
How did things change for you?
My career took off from that point because I was working for, the biggest online publication, and it was a very huge moment. It showcased how digital media was democratizing fashion and that something big was about to happen.
One of the reasons I was so excited to talk to you is that you're probably more of a celebrity like to fashion people than celebrities. I mean, we're in fashion, so we don't really think of celebrities as celebrities. I mean, we all have to shoot them, we all have to work with them. So it's like, and I've had a lot of people that I think are celebrities that I meet, like photographers or certain stylists or something. But there's no question that you are like front and center kind of a celebrity in our world. Do you have any sense of that? Doesn't sound like it. Like, you have to be really this is about being honest, like, we're gonna talk about your career and stuff. I'm just like, I think you're also, like, an enigma. I think I've seen you do a few interviews, but largely people like us that would have been photographed you or whatever, or people that look at your street style, like, you're so, behind the camera that people don't know you. But I also feel like it's less than other photographers like Inez and Benito or Stephen Meisel. Oh, well, Stephen Meisel doesn't talk to anybody, but you guys are just kind of like seen and not heard in a way, mostly because also people are just rushing by you.
Yeah. I think we're all observers, so it's just we're just naturally just very introverted in a way, and we don't like to engage because we're just constantly observing and just for me, because I'm working outside and just frantically looking at and scanning, that's why there's really no opportunity to really, well, for me to really stop and engage. But if I do, I'm very silly and easygoing and just, I mean, I don't really like to talk too much, but I mean, I think I just put up a little bit more of a barrier when it comes to having access to this.
Mhm. Mhm.
But I mean, I just personally don't find myself that interesting. That's all.
Okay, we're gonna get into that.
Oh
Not
boy.
not really get into like that whole thing, but I mean, I think you're so fascinating on so many levels. I also know that you're a nice person because
Yeah.
I've spent time with you and I've seen you and talked to you a little bit. I think also like people don't stop really and probably talk to you that much because A, they're on their way to the show and they're probably late. And B, it's like I'm very aware that if I'm stopping to talk to somebody like you, it's like it's taking money out of your pocket because there are people like rushing by that, and that's what your commodity is like your pictures. So if someone comes and talks to you, like, I don't know, what's that like for you?
I mean, I don't want people to think that I don't want to be approached or I'm very cold, but at the same time, I'm very zoned in and just trying to focus on what's happening because a fashion show. I mean, they happen very often, but it's also a very rare occurrence where so many people gather and then they get dressed up for this event. So, you just never know. Especially now with shows being a little bit more hectic with you know more police enforcement or barricades or security or screaming fans. So
Mhm.
you just have to savor the moment and just for me, I mean, I know everyone, so I don't really need to
Yeah.
be in this moment and soaking it in and socialize and and treating it like as if it's summer camp and I have to
Mhm.
embrace. But obviously, if we get coffee or drink after, then of course
Mhm.
I'd be happy to
Mhm.
to
Mhm.
gush.
Can I start out not in sort of traditional way, like how did you get started and all that? I want to get to it, but we all know that you're a street style photographer. We all know that you're one of the best and been doing it the longest, besides
Well, I wouldn't say the longest, but
Bill Cunningham.
yes, he was doing it for decades.
um,
There's a few that also have been doing the same amount of time, yeah.
yeah, we'll get into that, but tell us what it's like actually doing it. I think because this show may have a bit of a wider audience.
Mhm.
They may not have gone to fashion shows and seen what it's like. Um, what's it like for you? Like fashion editors are rushing, we're all going crazy, we're all haven't eaten, but we have arrived in a place like probably in a car. We've eaten, I mean, maybe at least we got to eat in the car. You arrive there, it's like throngs of people. We're walking in, like, who's gonna take our picture? Blah, blah, blah. Where am I gonna sit? Or blah, blah, who's in the better, blah, blah, blah. But what's it like for you? Tell me about like the ebb and flow. It's like when I was a waitress, it's like there'd be the ebb and flow. There's like no tables, no one's sitting there. You get on your shift and slowly start to people show up and your station gets filled and da da and then they all leave. Do you know what I mean? Like tell me from the beginning. Like, how early do you get to a show, or what's your
I mean, the earliest, if possible, is 20 minutes because it is like going to a party
yeah. 20
or
minutes before the start time of the
Bef
show
yeah,
because
so, yeah, before the, ETA, like, the estimated time arrival, everyone should be arriving at the suggested time, so let's say if the show's at 1, I'll get there at 12:40, and, people are generally early, and then there's obviously people that are very late, but the thing is, you know, you wanna be prepared and yeah, like, it's a publicized event where people from all aspects of the industry come. But for a passerby, they walk by and they just think, "Is this a sale or are people lining up?"
totally.
Especially in New York. But um, you know, I understand what the circumstances, and I just try to not get overwhelmed because you just never know what's going to happen. I mean, it is kind of like a conference if you want to explain it in you know average terms for someone that doesn't understand what a fashion show is because, people have this expectation that people just come and look at clothes and look at models walk by, but at the same time, it's a it's an opportunity for a brand to market their product and invite X amount of people. So it used to be very much focused on fashion insiders, where it's stylists, editors, writers, critics, but now it's including influencers, celebrities. So it is a very large marketing opportunity, not just for the brand itself, but also for photographers like myself, where we come and photograph people wearing the product, and then maybe just about people that are loitering. I don't know.
Being in it for so long, I mean, I used to work at Women's Wear Daily, so when, um, back in those days, they had, like, like, there's a place where you walk up and there's, like, little boxes where you'd be able to stand according to what publication you were at. So you and some other people who are, like, the elder statesmen, how do you know where you're gonna stand, or do people like, "Oh, Tammy's gonna stand here, so I'm not gonna stand here." Like, what's that whole thing? How do you choose where to stand? Have you stood in the same place at every because obviously, like, certain shows are in certain places all the time, like,
Yeah.
let's say Dior or whatever.
I mean, you try to stand where you're not drawing too much attention to yourself. I mean, I don't I'd like to do that because um I mean, I treat photographing a fashion show, like, as if you're out in nature, you're going fishing, or I don't wanna use the word hunting, but, like, you wanna be in a
Yeah.
spot where you have a great view of who's coming towards you or leaving the show, but you don't wanna I mean, for me, I specifically don't like to capture too much chaos in the background of my photos, so I don't specifically wanna stand in an area where so many people are intersecting at the same time. Or maybe I do. I don't know. It really depends on the day and the location. But for me, it's also the light too. So you don't
Mm.
want to take a photo of the most unflattering light on someone,
Mhm,
and then
mhm.
they'll question you why you took that photo. So
Mm,
there's a lot of factors you have to evaluate when you arrive at a show. Does this make me feel comfortable? Will I be able to take nice photos from this vantage point?
mhm,
I mean, it's like it's a mental checklist, so you check those off,
mhm.
but you don't really think, "Oh, now I'm gonna think about this, and I'm gonna think about that." You kind of move positions from here and there depending on where you notice people are where cars are being dropped off or if people happen to arrive by foot. So, I mean, it's boring stuff, but
Well, no, I mean, I think it's fascinating. Um, because this it just happens now, but, like, how has that changed from when you first started to now with, like, the crowds and the throngs and the people? Like, sometimes I'm thinking, like, how do you guys even get a person that you really wanna get because there's so many people, and so many photographers? Like,
yeah.
what was it like at the beginning, and what is it like now?
Well, at the beginning, it was very easy because there was only very few of us, and also fashion show wasn't regarded as this, um, overly spotlighted event where you have hundreds of people showing up, versus now. Well, also, I've had to do a lot it's been a journey where I know how to calm myself down and not get overwhelmed because, you can get caught up in it. So, you just I mean, for me, I just pick and choose my own battles now, so I know not to go to the larger shows where it's gonna feel as if you just ran into Times Square and you're dealing with X amount of people screaming at the same time, shouting, and
Mhm,
cars are honking, so
mhm,
I
mhm.
mean, I have this gift of having, like, laser hawk-like vision where I can actually recognize people sometimes in their car, just
Wow.
maybe a smile, or even if I can see them down the block or even further, I can recognize them from their walk. But regardless of the person, I can also just hone in on, "Oh, that's a Rodarte dress, and that's specifically what I wanna hone in on," as opposed to it being, "Oh, there's Taylor Swift."
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
which has happened, which I was really surprised about, but,
Oh,
uh
Taylor Swift wearing Rodarte?
no, well, she came to Rodarte, but she just walked along
Huh.
22nd Street, so this is in 2013. She just got out of her car and walked, but those times were different,
Oh,
like,
yeah, totally, those times were different.
so now
Ugh.
you have to be let out directly in front of the venue, and you just walk right in,
Mhm.
but, um, yeah, I mean, it really depends on the show, but also in that time, you could see so much further, but now, everyone's just blocking your view, so
Yeah. You mentioned, like, now you know how to calm yourself down. Do you actually, like, have a technique or that you do? I mean, do you do, like, breathing, or what do you do? What's your if you start to get like, I would be so overwhelmed if I was you guys. It's just enough for us to, like, to get there and go through the traffic and then, like, walk through your line and then get in the show and get to your seat, and, it's just like it's manic, the whole thing, the whole fashion month it's just, like, manic, and I think when you're a fashion editor, you basically go to all the shows, you're not like a celebrity and you're just going to, like, 1 or 2 a day and you're getting your hair and makeup done. I mean, I used to get my hair and
yeah.
makeup done, um like, how do you calm yourself down if you get into a situation where it's just so overwhelming? Is you're also, like, standing and cold and you're being rained on and guys are just like gorillas, like in war, kinda in battle, I feel.
You just kind of recuse yourself from the situation and just don't think, "This doesn't directly impact me,"
Mhm.
and just really not think, "Oh, this is not gonna make my day even worse." You just make the best of it regardless of the situation, so I mean, for instance, like, let's say Mimi, which has become such a huge event now in Paris, it's usually the last day and the last show, but, they invite a quite an interesting roster of, guests where it is a very interesting celebrity front row that a lot of young kids wanna come and see, and then, I could approach the situation thinking, "Oh, you know what? Maybe I'm not gonna be able to see the type of fashion insiders I like to photograph." But for instance, this past season, I noticed that they invited a lot more of their staff members, and I have a fixation with, um, anyone that, you know, is at the altar of Mucha Prada. So obviously, I started seeing these women. Oh, just the staff, like,
Like, they invited people that, a lot of people that actually work at Miu Miu? That's
yeah, that work at
wow.
Mu or just even are friends of, the brand.
Yeah, wow, that's
And
cool.
and for me, because I obviously I've had years, observing, different types of people, you just know from a visual standpoint when someone, you know,
Mhm,
gets it.
mhm.
I even said that to one of the women when I asked to photograph her. I embarrassedly said, "Oh, please, can I please take your photo? I get this," which was a s which
Because
is
she
a
was
s
probably like, "Why are you photographing me?"
yeah, because she was just like, "Why would you wanna photograph me versus these other influencers or celebrities that are coming inside the show?" And for me, that's f from a cultural standpoint, that's more significant for me. I mean, everyone else can take photos of the celebrities and influencers, and they do, but for me, because I'm trying to capture something that, is reflective of what my own personal taste, but also what I
Mhm,
think other people find interesting.
mhm.
So when I started seeing the staff members kind of slowly coming out from different angles, and my friend Tyler Joe,
Yeah,
who's also another photographer, he said, "Dude, I've never seen you, like, zip back and forth at Mimu like this. You were running all over the place. Like, what was going on in your head?" And the thing is, it's like when that moment happens where you realize, "Oh, this is really exciting," and you're capturing people that kind of just tickle
Well,
like,
they
your
also make the fashion, and something like Miu Miu or Prada, or, these houses where the designer is still there,
yeah.
and Ms. Prada has made she's a trailblazer, she's groundbreaker, she's a trendsetter, everyone does what she does, like, 3 seasons later, so, yeah, seeing those people is like it just like when you go into a designer's house and you see the people, like, the ladies in the white dresses and the people working on the stuff, I totally get that.
It's like when you go to a Comme des Garçons show or a Rick Owens
Oh,
show, see specifically people that, that are part of this community, and to me, that's more fascinating because it showcases the measure of influence that a designer has that you can wear a designer head to toe, you can go into the shop and buy the clothes, but then there's something about when someone kind of just pledges themselves to this, I don't wanna use the word cult, but it's just this extended family
no, for
where
sure.
so for instance, in the Mimi situation, it's like the choice of hair or the no makeup, and then the proportions and the socks and the sandals. It's like it's very much a fashion thing that, very few people understand. So for me, when I'm seeing that, it's like catnip, and I'm like,
Mhm, mhm.
okay, and at the same time, I have to juggle the fact, oh, there's all these people I have to run around because it's like this, open plaza, but the thing is it's filled with hundreds of people, so for my friend who was observing me, he was just like, "You're just, like, doing this versus just, like, moving slowly as I usually do."
Mm,
So the
mhm.
thing it's like and while I'm running with my camera, I'm, like, looking at, the traffic and the cars that are coming in and the security, so it's a lot of things to factor in, and then at the same time, trying to zone in and get that photo of that person either walking or even asking them to stop, so your mind is moving at a
Yeah.
really fast pace, so
And then, like, what's that like for those periods of the shows when, it's like your brain is doing that, and then how many shows do you do a day now? Like, let's say in Paris. Well, Paris is a lot slower, I guess, than New York, but I don't know,
oh,
do
no,
you
no, Paris is
yeah, I guess
it's more
it's
the schedule's a little bit more, packed in than it is in New York. I mean, New York, you remember what it was like 10 years ago when you'd have a lot of overlapping presentations and shows happening at the same time.
yeah, that's true, I guess.
Whereas in Paris, you may have maybe, I would say 5 to 8 good
Mhm,
shows a day.
mhm,
But the thing is, it's a matter of choosing how many you're actually gonna do and whether you're gonna commit to zigzagging through the city going to each of them. So
mhm,
and I try to now what I realize is not get overwhelmed and feel like I have to go to the Dior show or the Schiaparelli show. Like it's just what is it that brings me joy? And the thing is, I can only accumulate so many images for my own personal interests. So that's why I'm just more focused on the shows that bring me a lot more joy.
mhm. Okay, let's take it back. I think what we're seeing about you is that you're very, chill, you're very relaxed, you have a very cool head on your shoulders. I think it's important for people to well, I don't know, not everybody is like that though, but I think it speaks to your, longevity, what you've been able to accomplish in these crazy situations and still be doing it today as like one of the elder statesmen. Tell me how you got started. I know that
Um,
I know the story. I know the story. I don't know. I can go through it a little bit. I kind of, so you started doing a blog. No, why don't you tell me in your own words? I mean, I've read a little bit about it, but you can kind of scan through it. And I think what I am trying to do with this show is like it's a fashion show. I talk to fashion people, but I talk to fashion people about sort of how they got there, how they stay there, and how they deal with like, no roadmap, like, extremely competitive, and there's, like, insane working conditions, meaning, like, whether you're a photographer or model, whatever, working on a photo shoot, there's, like, this certain time and place where everyone's coming together to do this certain
yeah,
thing. So there was, like, this enormous pressure, um, to get something done in a very short amount of time.
yeah,
And so I think that that in and of itself being in our business is really intense. I think that being in our business is intense. Like there's so much scrutiny and just like mindset. I'm curious about people's mindset and I think that fashion, well it's not like, surviving cancer or something like that. It's kind of it's very intense and it takes a lot of mental fortitude to, get into it, stay into it, and stay in it, and so tell me about your upbringing, I guess, as it relates to what you do now and, like, maybe a through line or something like that from how you were when you were younger to how you are now, like, what pulled you through?
I mean, I think the thing that has pulled me through since the beginning till now is just a genuine love for fashion.
Mhm.
So, my interest in photography didn't stem from, a love of taking photos. It was just because I love fashion so much. So, it started when I was a teenager. I became interested in fashion when I was a teenager, and I had aspirations to want to be a part of fashion. So, immediately I wanted to be a designer. And then, like through my
And
teenage years,
you were born in Canada, so already that
yeah,
puts you,
so I
like
was born in
I
Toronto,
wouldn't
yeah.
say it at a disadvantage, but, you're not, like, growing up in New York City or whatever,
Yeah,
so, I mean, it
I'm
just you had a journey to get here.
yeah, so I was observing fashion, as a teenager in the '90s through the typical forms of, media, whether it was magazines or television programs, but it was initially through television, and I was watching fashion programming, and I was recording it for my sister, and I became immediately enraptured by the idea of or the world of fashion, and it was Tom Ford specifically that lured me in. Um,
Like, what kinda you mean like the fashion TVs like Janine
like
Becker, like, those kinda insider ones?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
before, we were viewing fashion through our mobile phones, we were either looking at through our television sets or through the computer. So,
Mhm.
um, specifically every weekend, I was watching this program called Fashion Television,
Loved it.
um, and it was just love at first sight. I just knew right away that this was a world that I wanted to be a part of. I was immediately seduced by Tom Ford's words and the way that he was describing, specifically the heroin chic collection, the spring '97 collection. So that's the collection with the interlocking G's.
Yes.
So, as a 13-year-old, I was, you know, just completely in awe and wanted to be part of this world. So, I was very much like a comic book nerd, and I was very much into my own little thing, and all of a sudden, this world that just opened up in front of my eyes. I just knew right away that this is the industry that I wanted to work in. So, I started sketching, and I started having these dreams of wanting to be a designer. And then, like in high school, I had to do an internship, so I worked for a designer. And then, like, I started becoming more, um, I matured quite quickly, just understanding, what it took to work in this industry. And I
Mm.
realized I'm not equipped to become a designer.
Mhm.
Maybe I wanted to be a buyer, so I started working at a retailer, this store called Holt Renfrew. And then, obviously, doing that, I realized, oh, buying is not for me because it's a little bit more static in the fact that you were always in an office sitting at your computer. So then fast forward to 2005, which is 20 years ago, this is when I realized, oh, like, well, blogging hadn't become a thing, but I realized, oh, maybe I want to launch an online publication where I feature obviously my own market pages, but at the same time, maybe I go out and take photos of people with what they're wearing on the street. Because I had this fascination with how real people would wear the clothes as opposed to just celebrities or
Yeah.
models.
Mhm.
And in the 2000s, this was the height of like celebrity culture,
Mhm.
uh, just at the beginning of reality TV culture. It hadn't exploded
True.
yet. So, I just thought, oh, with the camera, this is a way um, to socialize and obviously get over the fact that I was very shy. So I could stop
Fascinating.
people, and so I could stop people at parties or a local fashion week and ask them, "Oh, can I take your photo for my website?" Fast forward to 2007, I go to London and Paris just because I got bored of taking photos in Toronto, and I just lost it because I realized, you know, to be a part of this ecosystem of fashion, when you go specifically to Fashion Week in Paris specifically, and you see these editors who I had no idea existed, I realized,
Oh,
"Oh,
really? You hadn't
yes."
like, you didn't see
I
because
mean,
I guess fashion television, wouldn't they, like I've been interviewed for that after the shows, they would come up and, like, interview
yeah.
editors, like, "What'd you think of the show?" But you didn't well, I guess a lot of them they didn't people wouldn't stop to do those interviews. You're right, not a lot of people did, like
No, I was fully familiar with, like the Susie Menkes, the
Mhm,
Kathy Warrens, but the thing is when you're there specifically in person and you're seeing the junior editor or
mhm.
the senior editor, and just for me, it was seeing the Vogue Paris team coming out of the Balmain show. I just
I mean, I can't. Like, Emmanuel all you mean, like, the girls and Geraldine
Yeah,
and so
so
I
when you
just
when you see style on this another elevated level, when you see people wear clothes in a way that it's just such more, like, thought out and refined, and you're seeing your fashion heroes before you realize they are your hero.
Mhm,
So, from that moment, just observing how real fashion people look like in the flesh, I thought, "I have to come to Fashion Week every season, there's no excuse."
mhm.
So, ever since February 2007, I've gone to every single women's fashion week. So, there's never been a season I've missed because
Oh my
I
god.
swore to myself, "This is it. I have to be here every season." And it took 2 years of fully understanding how I should document these people. Initially, I was just stopping people and just taking their photo. I was watching Bill Cunningham and how he went about taking his photos, and I understood that he just really didn't question anything, like, he just followed his instincts, so he would just take a photo regardless. So, I just thought maybe I should go back into how shy I am and just not stop people and just candidly take a photo of these people just walking, or maybe just focus in on their shoe or their bags and just having a different perspective as opposed to taking that same photo that everyone else was taking. And
Mhm.
then that's how it happened.
I mean, so that's another, I think, mindset thing that a lot of people have constantly struggled with throughout time, and certainly now with social media, is the idea of conformity. And now we also have so many metrics about, oh, I should do, we can see what everyone else is doing. So, how did you tell me more about leaning into, your shyness and making the decision to do something different than everybody else was doing?
I mean, it wasn't that I didn't have work or clients. I did when, I was taking that very simple static photo of just someone stopping and posing.
Mhm.
But then instinctively, I just thought, oh, there's something more interesting when I look at the photos, when I see people in motion.
Mhm.
And I started uploading these photos to my blog, which was called Jack and Jill at the time.
Jack and Jill.
Yes,
Major.
and then from there, I just started getting a very positive reaction, and then, you know, fast forward to September 2009, that's when I got the call from style.com, and, um, for anyone that doesn't know what style.com was, it was the fashion bible, the online fashion bible. So there was obviously Vogue, but then style.com was the Condé Nast site that people would log into to look at, runway images and read reviews. So this was a site that I would log into in the computer lab at school. So,
What were
to
you
get that.
going what kind of school were you going to?
Oh, I'm talking about high school.
Oh, regular high school.
So so,
You're
run
logging in the compu is that how you're writing your blog on this on the
No, no,
computer
no.
at
So,
school?
like, so in 2000, when I was telling you about how I had this initial interest in fashion, whenever I had time not doing homework, I was just sitting at my computer screen, just going on style.com or First View and just printing off just runway images because, like fashion magazines obviously edit what goes into the magazine and you don't see everything. So in 2000, when you don't get to see the entire collection, you want to log in and look at every single image. So I was fully nerding out at the time. So, fast forward almost 10 years later, when you get the call to work for the very website that you log into every day, like it's instinctually like everyone would type style.com the moment that they would log onto their computer, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
If you work in fashion. So, like, it's one thing to look at a monthly magazine, but then to have a daily source of of fashion inspiration, that's what style.com was.
It's like the Vogue of, fashion magazines to, like, for the consumer,
Yeah.
and then for the fashion insiders, I mean, style.com was it's the Bible. It's like it was the Bible. It's like where you go for everything.
Yeah.
So, tell me, so you get the call.
So they did have street style coverage. It was done by Scott Schumann initially. So then when he left, they were looking for someone else to fill that position, and they had contacted me because I guess they felt that my photos represented a different point of view in fashion. And yes, so when I got the call, I lost my mind because for a kid from the suburbs in Toronto, you dream of being able to work in fashion, so then to be tapped as, um, to be the eyes and ears of everyone that goes onto the site and hopes to see what people are wearing, it was a huge responsibility, but, I was more than willing to take the job, so I took it. And then that was actually the same time that season when Dolce Gabbana made this huge move, this PR move where they put bloggers in the front row. So, if you go to fashion shows now, there's a whole dedicated section just for influencers or content creators. But back then that was considered like digital media was not even considered in the conversation. So to see four people, myself, Brian Boy, Scott Schumann, and Garon Storey placed front row in Dolce Gabbana, it was a very, very, very intimidating experience because I had never been invited to a show in Europe. So to walk in just trying to look for my seat in the very back row and then see that it's actually right there,
In the
one
front row,
seat
I
the front row section, one seat away from Anna Wintour, I thought there was something wrong, but, they were being very smart. They did something, and that's when everything just came into play, and
I mean, I remember that exact show. Tilte seating was always really tricky.
yes, it's
It was that kind of it was like went like straight up and
yeah.
there were kind of relatively few seats in comparison to the other shows, I guess. And they were notoriously very hardcore at seating, but maybe it was because it was so small. But I remember I used to be like not get a row that
They were
I
very political with their seating.
yeah, yeah. And so I would be kind of yeah, it'd be a struggle to get I don't know, at that point, I was probably sitting, like, 2nd or 3rd or something, I probably got 4th, and then, because like, fashion editors were always so like, when influencers started to come up, I was definitely on the other side where we're just like, "Oh my god, like, who do they think they are? Like, who do they"
Yep.
like, they don't know what they're doing, and they're just, like, outside, they don't know anything about fashion, and but we could see that they were also part of fashion, like, the people who you're naming that because you guys did have blogs, like, Garance had a blog, you had a blog, I
Yeah.
guess Scott had a blog, and then Brian Boyd. So, we obviously, like, thought we were working at magazines and, like, we knew everything, and, like, they're just outsiders, like, looking from the outside. I'm just being perfectly honest, and I
Yep.
remember that show, and it was either in Women's Wear Daily, like, that day or maybe the day after or something like that, and I remember looking and seeing you guys and in the front row, and I'm like, "Oh my god," like, I can't believe, like, those are, like, our seats, and there's, like, 4 more seats that we could have, like, "Oh my god," but it was a moment I mean, everybody was staring at you guys. I felt that everybody had their vibe guns out, like, "Who the fuck are they, and why are they" not who are they, but, like, why the fuck are they in here? Why they should be outside, do you know what I mean? Like, I'm being perfectly hon you probably were aware, but, you
No,
know
I was not aware of what was happening because I was doing what I usually do, which is run around taking photos outside, And in September, Milan is very hot, so I was all sweaty, and I rush inside hoping I'm not gonna miss my opportunity to get my seat, and I'm looking and looking, and I look, and I'm standing there looking at my invitation, and I'm like, "No, this can't be right. Why am I
I mean,
seated?"
yeah,
And
front row.
there's a laptop place there, so the fact that I have to sit there with this prop in
Oh my god,
front
I
of me.
remember that. I totally remember that too.
So I was a prop, and, there was a reason why they did that because they wanted to make a statement, and the fact that they got that image of myself and Brian Boyce sitting 1 seat away from Anna Wintour,
Mhm.
it was a very huge moment because it showcased how digital media was democratizing fashion and that something big was about to happen,
Yeah,
and it foreshadowed what was gonna happen in the next few years because eventually more and more outsiders came into the picture and then became normalized.
yeah. I mean,
So
I think, wow, boy, was it a moment for us. Like, I'm sure it probably also scared, fashion editors and
Oh,
stuff
absolutely, yeah.
because we're like, "Shit, are they gonna take our jobs?" We would always pride ourselves on, like, this immense fashion knowledge, and I think that assuming that you guys, like, didn't have that, but now, talking to you and reading a little bit about you, obviously, you know, that was my first Tom Ford. Oh, this is my second Gucci show, sorry, the one that you're talking about with the double Gs. Um,
Okay. Oh, so you were at that show?
oh my god, I was at that show. It was like it might have been my first show, I started to cry. I was fucking
I
crying.
would've
It must have been my first show. I was fucking crying, crying. I mean, I was only lucky because I was there for men's, I don't know, I back then I think I worked at Details. And oh yeah, I remember crying, just crying, crying, crying. Crying. Just like I can't believe I'm here because the lights and everything, how he would do like
it was spotlit, yeah,
spotlights, following them down. It was so sexy and
yeah.
dark and, just everything. But back then we didn't know. We thought you guys were just like observers because we'd also like seen you outside, so but
Uh,
that really set wow, it was like a fucking moment. Like it's true. I mean, Dolce's very smart, they're very like they're marketing geniuses. They put you there. We're like, "Oh my god, are they like live blogging?" It's like also put us on our back foot because we're like they're showing what's happening now and we're going to
yeah,
have to wait 6 months to show what's happening right now. And but it really it did start the fire. I felt like that really started it. Like if Dolce was behind you and the fashion industry was behind you, the designers, then we better fall in and realize that
everything did come into play right after that moment because. It was just at the beginning of when I started working for saw.com, but then obviously to be embraced as this separate entity. So then as soon as I left, that was the last show of the Milan, if I remember. And then going into Paris, all of a sudden I started getting invitations to shows that I'd be standing outside waiting, just hoping to be let in. So the fact that I had printed invitations with my name on it, like it was a big deal.
of
And
course
back
it oh my
then,
god, and sitting inside well, it's just I mean, for fashion lovers, watching a show is like a fucking dream. That's the minute you wait for. It's like having to get to the point where the show actually starts and the people come out, but, like, hearing the music, I remember thinking, like, "Oh my gosh, we're so lucky. We're hearing the music. We're smelling whatever scents," some designers used to do scented shows and stuff.
yes.
We're
Oh
seeing
yeah.
everything. So, like, what was that like for you sitting at your first well, that was Dolce, so that was I mean
Prior to Dolce, I had gotten into some shows, but the thing is, Dolce was the one that decided, "Let's put them in the front row, beyond just inviting them. Let's make this huge media statement." But then, yes, going into Paris, did I get the same kind of treatment? No, but I was just happy to have an invitation because you wait patiently just to be finally embraced by the industry. But what I wanted to go back on was how there was this traditional path of how you'd work in fashion. You would intern or you'd work at this publication as a junior editor, and you make your way up to this other role that you'd get later on. But it would take time, so obviously, to see outsiders come into this industry and fast track the situation, like usually celebrities are the ones that get instantly seated front row for no reason, but then to see, you know, regular people being given this opportunity to be sat in the front row. And my back was covered in sweat because like I thought I was just taking photos outside. So if you look at the image, you see, all these American editors sitting behind me, and I can only imagine what they were thinking. Who is this kid that's
Daggers, daggers,
yes.
daggers. Because all
And
we cared
just
about was, like, where we're gonna sit,
yeah, exactly. It's the
And
most
and I guess our job
stereotypical
I mean,
thing.
and our jobs. We'd heard about the bloggers and we'd seen them, and you guys would be outside and then you were inside? Yeah, so go ahead. I keep cutting you off, but yeah,
No,
so
no,
your experience, you're sitting there, you're yeah.
but we have 2 different separate experiences because, like, you came from a traditional way of working in the industry, and then for someone to gate crash the party, it was very jarring, and I can only understand how that felt, but at the same time, I
Right.
just feel like, "Oh gosh, I feel so out of place," like, I just feel like, like someone that was just thrown onto the stage of, like, a concert, and all of a sudden you're there to perform, and I was placed there to perform because they wanted me to live tweet because whatever I was tweeting was projected onto the live screen. So
I
Hamish
forgot that
Bowles
part.
yeah, so Hamish Bowles, who was sitting right next to me, he leaned in and he goes, "What's Twitter?" And I and I had to, like, teach him, like, "Oh, this is what's happening when I type into this computer right now. It's being projected right in front of
Oh
everyone,
my
and
god.
everyone can see what my thoughts are." So, this was very much early stages of, um, digital platforms being embraced by the industry, like, it wasn't like every editor had their own Substack or Twitter account. It was extremely, extremely early because, you know yeah, there was no digital media. We were this new form of media that was coming into the picture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember another thing I used to think is that, wow, how are they talking about fashion? They don't have any, like knowledge or insider. Like it's just this, it was so weird. God, and I just think that that shows how insular the fashion world, was. It kind of it's holding on, but it's like was little. It was a big the fashion industry was a big fish in a small pond, and now they've gotten smaller, and you guys and everyone else has gotten bigger.
Well,
And the fashion industry is like notoriously also like pretty provincial, very closed off. There are a lot of really insecure people, a lot of people that were just, I don't know. So yeah, tell me more about what happened after that. So how did things change for you?
I mean, yes, my career took off from that point because I was working for, um, the biggest online publication, and I started presenting a different perspective of what it was like being at fashion shows. But at the same time, I was juggling with the fact that I was becoming recognized as an industry professional, but still seen as an outsider. So, regardless of being embraced by certain people in the industry or um,
The smart
public,
people.
I mean, it takes fashion is very fickle. Like sometimes, like we welcome change with open arms, but actually we don't
Mhm.
because there's others that are holding on to traditions. Um,
Oh.
so yeah, I mean, I was having a lot of fun because all of a sudden I was being known for this particular voice and I was engaging with certain editors where they loved being photographed because that was the thing. Editors were never the ones in front of the camera. They were always the ones behind the scenes creating the images, right? So all of a sudden to be spotlighted as these figures of style, like it was a new thing
Like
because
style arbiters, like
yeah,
fashion journalists,
you
style
guys were
arbiters and
you
fashion
guys were the
journalists.
ones that were always dictating trends, so they're not but through your work, so all of a sudden to be the ones where you're the ones showcasing the trends in terms of what you're wearing, because like, street style became more of a medium as to showcasing trends, and it was more of a, like, accessible, filtered way of wearing clothes as opposed to just seeing it on the runway.
Totally.
So, all of a sudden, what was happening outside of fashion shows became a runway in itself. So, there's some people that took it to extremes where, like, Anna Della Russo is wearing a different outfit to every show.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden for you guys to be more conscious about, "Uh-oh, now I need to make sure that every season when I go to shows, I have this Gucci bag or these Prada shoes." And, like, you're all of a sudden being scrutinized because all of a sudden there's photographers taking your photos when you're just going to work. So
It was a nightmare. It was a fucking nightmare. It was a nightmare. Well, Bill, I got photographed by him a few times. But yeah, it wasn't as insane when that whole thing happened. Basically, we'd all be like, as soon as you got to Milan, you'd run to you'd fan out to which Prada you're gonna go to. You're gonna go to Via Monte Napoleone, or you're gonna go to the one in the Galleria. Like, who's the one that's gonna have the stuff that you're gonna want? And it was all about getting our picture taken then, because that became a commodity. I had one editor in chief that when I would get my picture, like when Bill would take my picture, because she probably didn't look at style.com, she'd be like, "Oh, nice one." That became like a part of your commodity. So
Yeah.
to get photographed by you guys was really became, a real feather in the cap. And as
Yeah.
street style, became more influential as, in telling fashion stories. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
You could see right away in editorials, and all of a sudden brands were using this medium as a way to showcase their product in campaigns. So that's when obviously I started getting hired because I offered this service of shooting fashion in a more realistic,
mhm,
accessible way. So
mhm,
I can only imagine how, for the industry to realize, oh, is this what people are responding to? Like that realism of just fashion in the streets and not showcasing it on. I mean, it's still being shot on models, but the thing is, it's not a full head to toe look. They want to see things broken down, and like that's how trends are being dictated now versus.
mhm. No, I think we're probably, back then also they were like full look policy. It took a lot. There were only certain editors that really could like take looks apart um and put different things together, but a lot of people were sort of like had the iron cuffs, and when you shot something you'd have to do a full look. So it was like a jealousy thing. I think it was just someone's coming in to take our spots, and
Yeah.
no one had dared to do that in like forever since I'd been in fashion. But now it is, I don't know, it is fashion. It is a fashion magazine. Like, tell me, let's go back to you. Like, what was your who first hired you to do like a fashion shoot?
Actually, so just prior to Star.com, I got tapped to shoot the Lane Crawford campaign.
Oh, wow. Amazing.
So Lane Crawford is a department store in Hong Kong that very much like
The
Barney's or
best.
Bert,
I mean, they were like the one, I mean, they are like one of the,
one of the top retailers
yeah,
in
in
the
the
world.
world.
So prior to me shooting the campaign, it was Inez Venu shooting the campaign for several years. And
Oh
so
my God.
when I got that email asking, "Oh, would I be interested in shooting the spring 2009 campaign?" I just thought, "Is this a joke?" Because
Oh my God.
I wrote a when I was in photography class in high school, I wrote a report about Inez Venu. So to be the next photographer, following up their campaign, I just was like, this is not right because I'm just some kid that takes photos outside of shows. So this was just the beginning of realizing, oh, what I'm doing has a bit of influence now in this industry because
Hmm.
it's there's a certain element of glamour to just seeing a fashion insider dressed a certain way, frantically running to a show because it's not like a red carpet premiere where you're wearing an evening gown. You're now wearing, for instance, like there's so many tropes about editors. So like there's the Emmanuel Alts where she's wearing, the skinny jeans with the belted blazer versus like an Anna De La Russo would wear like a feathered sequin lanvin dress or whatever to the show. So obviously the stylist Declan Chan was like, oh, let's capture these certain editor isms and put it into our campaign because
So smart.
that's what was capturing,
Mm-hmm.
fashion at the moment. So
Mm-hmm.
that was the first big job before the Style.com thing happened.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, I was shooting not campaigns, like editorials for whether it's like Vogue Japan or I started working with Harper's Bazaar with Joanna
Mm-hmm.
Hillman for under Glenda Bailey. So yeah, I mean, I was pegged as the street style photographer, but I went along with it because that's what I did.
And listen, when I was really honest back then, or when I was honest about what was happening, obviously I was just being really real and telling you,
Of
because
course.
from the insider, it's a different, also about this show, it's a bit insidery. We're like revealing what the reality of things. But I remember when it got really crazy with the street style and there was a lot of pressure for me from my job to get photographed. Um, I used to because, you're dressing up for 3 weeks straight, hoping that we're gonna get your attention or, a handful of other people when there's, like, 10,000,000 people, and there's the Emmanuel Alts who, like I wanted to look like her. I'm like, "I'm gonna just do it like a j" I mean, and she just wore the same thing over and over, but she always
Yeah.
looked fucking amazing with the over the knee boot, and, like, they just had this effortless style. Um but I would look at street style pictures to get ideas of
Yeah.
outfits. Believe it for
Th
myself.
and that didn't really exist before
Mm-mm.
because as it is now, it's still focused on celebrity dressing, but for someone that was working in fashion, you started seeing all these inspiration images of your colleagues in different aspects of the industry, and these images were being used as mood board images for
Totally.
campaigns and for editorials, so it was like being in free I can only assume what it felt like being in high school where you're looking at the popular girls and you're like, "I want those Isabel Marant sneaker boots or those wedge sneakers," or I want, like, that Balmain jacket that's overly
I wanna be
bedazzled.
tall. I wanna be
Y
tall. I never really thought about, like, my height. I mean, I'm kinda tiny, but it's like, "Oh my god, I have to be tall to, like, look like her and extremely skinny." And wear the black and the perfect I mean, I remember, like, when okay, you get the black jean, but, like, what is the perfect length? If
Yeah,
you're gonna wear the Balenciaga heels, anyways, it's just so fascinating. But a lot of your pictures would, like, also be doing details about
yeah.
these girls, so you're like, "What handbag are they carrying?" Or, "How's their thing tucked in?" Or, that's
It was a different exercise in style because it wasn't just a curated image that was created for a magazine, like,
Mm-mm.
these were real images.
Mhm.
So I can only imagine what it was like being, an American editor versus a European editor. And I've spoken to Europeans where they're like, "Oh, at the time, we were just looking at specifically Taylor Tomasi because she was, like, the beacon of American style."
Yeah, she is cool.
And then versus, like,
She is.
the Americans who are like, "Oh, no, it's about Emmanuel Alt or Corinne
Oh,
Reutfeld,"
that's
like
so funny! Oh my
yeah.
god. I thought they'd be looking at us going like, "Ugh."
No, but because at the time in the early 2010s, like, this whole trend of color blocking and,
Mm.
like, over accessorizing was becoming more prevalent,
Yeah, Taylor
so
was,
for
like,
me,
the best. Yeah.
she was the girl, right? And especially the Teen Vogue staff too, or even Kate Lanfear, like, there was just a different because I've still to this day, like, wherever you're coming from, whether you're living in New York or you're living in Paris, there's, like, just this idea of uniform dressing that is very geographically associated with that culture. So obviously, if you're a French girl, like you don't wear a lot of makeup, your hair is not blown out, you don't over accessorize, you don't wear a lot of color. Versus being an American, you're just like, oh, like of course I want to look joyful and I want to look fashionable. I'm gonna, you know, carry all these labubus on my bag or just wear a super high heel.
Mhm.
Whereas like, like in Paris, there's more of a practical sense of dressing that's adopted, or
Mhm.
it's more about investment dressing. So
Mhm. Also back then, I think Anna because Anna really did rule I mean, as she does,
let's
believe
this day.
whatever you say.
No bra.
She yeah, I mean, well, and she was also, like, color, color, color. Except
Yeah,
and it's so interesting because like, Grace wore her uniform, and Camilla was really edgy, and Tawny had a uniform, but Anna and everything she did in the magazine was always, like, color, color, color. I mean, she's still, like, a Prada head to toe and all that stuff, so it's interesting because I think a lot of the American girls thought that to get on her radar, you needed to dress
a
like
lot of
that, you know what I mean? Like, I used to love it when she would look at me, I'm like, "Okay, I made it," you know what I mean? Like, "Okay, that's cool." She looked at me up and down when I passed her going to a show. But, so, like, let's talk about what you think is personal style. I mean, I think I wanna talk about your mindset, like, how you did it, but I'm so fascinated now, and I have been fascinated, and knowing also that you're, like, a real fashion person, and I knew that you had an interest, so I was just I was lumping you guys all together. I don't really know, um, Brian I don't know those other guys
I mean, I think
but
we all have an appreciation for fashion to a certain degree, and, for I can't speak for Brian, but I just know that he loves to consume fashion, he wears fashion,
totally.
and now particularly he's wearing the Elia bodysuits and whatnot. so which is great. But, I'm just someone that has been always a fashion enthusiast, and I grew up through this school of fashion where, like, I digested every magazine
Yeah.
or looked at or watched every saw.com video,
Yep.
so that to me was my training, and
Mhm.
still to this day, I still nerd out and be like, "Oh, that those shoes are from fall 2010 though.
Mhm.
Balenciaga, of course you're wearing those." So
Mhm.
it's just that's the gift that I have is that I just can memorize all this visual information and just it's stored ahead of mine. Sorry about that.
Which is
Uh,
really like a fashion person. Fashion people
yeah,
know, and I remember when I used to like spend so much money trying to get you guys to, be noticed or I mean, it was that, but it was also against the other editors too. Not against, but I remember like there were certain people who like I remember when the girl from Kieran Zabet wore the first Duro dress. No, Beth like had a Duro dress and Sally Singer had a Duro dress. And by the
remember
time I got to Paris, I was like, "I'm gonna fucking have a Duro dress if it kills me, and how in the hell am I gonna get one?" Because he was still working on Portobello Road, but, I didn't realize till later that most of the street style people did not understand that was, like, fresh, hot off the press or, it's this season's blah, blah, because I remember thinking, like, I can't wear I mean, if you're I can't even wear what's in the season now, I gotta dress for next season, but, you're definitely one of the people who
I remember that it was 2007/2008
mm,
when that dress was having its moment.
I
But I
mean
mean, those type of items would have their moment, whether it's, I don't know, like that a fringed Isabel Marant boot,
mhm.
or I mean, I could go on about the items, but the thing is, when you have this is when brands started to realize, oh, when certain people wear certain items, it amplifies the influence of the brand and obviously the product itself. So, obviously it started with seeding fashion insiders with the product, and they're just thinking, oh, let's just see what it's like when we have these editors or stylists carrying the bag to the show and seeing it photographed. And then when things start to change and realizing, oh, well, if they're a bit fickle about wearing it, why don't we approach these bloggers or influencers that have decent followings? This is before people started having hundreds of thousands of followers,
Wow. And
you
did you
know?
know that was happening back then?
Yeah, because I was being hired by the brand sometimes to photograph the items. So whether it's like, Chloe that's like, "Oh, please, like, make sure you capture it,
Yeah.
the patterns in your whatever bag." And then, as Instagram is being introduced to fashion, it starts becoming a thing where, "Oh, this is how we're gonna market our product because we're gonna start seeing it to people that have pretty large followings." Because, like, obviously magazines have pretty big followings, but to have a digital presence and then to have that immediate effect of, "Oh, this is how we're gonna market our product by seeding it." And then obviously with certain brands, even like Loewe, they would give their handbags to the models right after the show,
Oh,
so
yeah, and those girls are just fucking off the hook.
yeah,
They're like the model off duty style, like, that's another
exactly, so
level.
that's how that mall off duty thing happened because, like, they started realizing, "Oh, models are being photographed in their off-duty outfits. Let's place the bag on the model." So and then to take it to another level, they're like, "Well, the models don't really have that much of a following. Let's seed it on Man Repeller or the Blonde Salad." And the thing is these girls have millions of followers, and then that's how we're gonna bring more attention to the product and obviously the brand. So obviously when you go to a show now, it's a normalized thing to see an influencer that's dressed in a very specific head to toe look by the brand because it's now this marketing exercise.
So tell me about you and your work in the moment that changed and people were because obviously you've been trained with, like, editors and those people who had, like, full on real style as a and even the girls that Taylor Tomasi and blah, blah. Leandra was interesting because she was a blogger, but she also has, great style, but so because I remember thinking like, "God, what do the photographers think of these girls who are not cool, like, don't look cool?" Do you know? Because like, I think that also, the street style, like, stars as opposed to influencers, like, it wasn't like, they didn't wear the hair and make I mean, if they were doing hair and makeup, like, it was, like, Taylor with her red lip or whatever. It wasn't like I mean, a lot of the influencers, like, were full on D.O.N.E. done, and they looked not as, effortless. Like, did you still take their picture if you weren't hired by the brand?
Yeah, of course. I mean,
Oh, interesting.
like, it becomes this red carpet situation where, of
So
course, you want to capture whoever's wearing, the latest look straight off the runway. There's a certain level of excitement because,
mhm.
if someone's gonna wear look 32 fully from head to toe walking into the show, there's a certain level of excitement about that.
Totally.
Is there fatigue after a certain while? Yes. But back to what you're saying, even if someone's not fully dressed up, like I realize, oh, there's a certain level of importance still capturing, a Kathy Horn or a Tawny Goodman who's wearing the exact same thing over again. But the thing is, they are part of the ecosystem, and somewhere down the line, these images are going to make sense when I'm going to work on a bigger project. So I wouldn't always be mindful of capturing every single person that would come to a show, but I would realize, like there's there's certain moments when you realize, oh, just seeing Kathy just walk and
Mm,
just looking at her BlackBerry and her glasses are sitting at the tip of her nose. I'm like, there's just something very enduring or just
totally.
charming. Because the thing is, like, everyone contributes something to this industry. And the thing is, when you look at the bigger picture and you realize it's not just about the person wearing the head to toe look, like you want to capture every person in every aspect. Because when you look back at it, it's not going to be the same in the next few years because, you know, journalists and critics are no longer such a big deal at fashion shows or even editors, really. It's now
Mhm,
become more and more about content creators.
mhm.
And there was a time when this industry was very, like you said, very um,
Insular insular
insular,
and provincial.
and it was like a members only club. So
Mhm,
the fact that social media really democratized fashion and changed the landscape of fashion. So when you go to a fashion show now, it becomes a
mhm,
very anxiety-induced situation because everyone is taking photos of these content creators or the
mhm,
celebrities. They're
mhm,
not so much focused on the insiders anymore
mhm,
because
mhm,
they're not the ones that bring in the numbers anymore,
mhm.
but they're the ones that started the fire
But they're
because
also not some usually the risk takers who, like, wanna get dressed up. Like, let's talk about you and what you think personal like, you are a style arbiter because you take the pictures, and then did you, like, edit your own weren't you the one who edited your pictures when
yeah,
they were on style.com? Like, it's not like someone else is picking. You're the
no,
one who's
yeah.
picking the pictures.
It was my point of view that was respected, and I very much value that of the team that they gave me full carte blanche, and I could just do whatever I wanted. Because yeah, if it was, some photo editor making the
No.
selects, it wouldn't have the
God.
same impact.
And I also wanna, like, illuminate people as to the quantity of images that you're looking through because every night people would go on style.com and like, "Oh my god, did I get in there? Did I get in there?" And, um, but there was only like 99 or 96 or whatever. Were you given a quota? It was under 100 or near 100 or maybe it grew.
Every day would be about, I think, 15 to 30 images. So to sort through a few thousand every day, it was it was very exhausting. I mean, luckily I don't have to do that anymore, but it is a lot to sift through because you spend the majority of the day running around on your feet, and then to go home and you wanna actually just have a meal, but you can't because you have to sit on your computer and basically sift through these images and think, "Oh, is this relevant? Is this gonna capture the eye of some kid that lives in the middle of nowhere? Are they gonna be inspired?"
Mhm.
So it was a huge responsibility that people would log into one source and look at your photos versus now, you go on Instagram and you just are bombarded by so many different perspectives and everyone's a photographer. So,
Mhm.
you could be sitting at a show and you're just enraptured by someone's iPhone video, so it doesn't
Mhm.
even matter anymore. So and so captures the image. There are rare moments when, like, for instance, like, I caught this, um, moment of Rei Kawakubo just standing on
Oh
by
my god, I
herself.
saw that picture. Oh my god, because that was just in the past couple of seasons, right?
That was,
Like last
2
se
years ago.
Yeah, yeah,
It
yeah,
was
it
2
was really as recent. Oh my god.
So, yeah, there's moments like that
Mm.
that cut through the noise and that will capture people's interest, but at the same time, it's hard to capture a moment that is very special and unique because everyone is capturing the same thing. So, for me, it's just being a bit more mindful of, um, telling a story as to
Mhm.
why that moment was special and
Mhm.
why I'm fixated on that person's, the way that they're belting something or the way that they
Mhm.
have all these charms dangling. Like, you just have to be more mindful of how you're gonna tell that story to a
Mhm.
larger audience via social media, so
So if people want to feel everybody want to see street style now and they wanna feel like they have that certain something, what would be your advice for people getting dressed?
I think just follow your instinct and just dress for yourself. I think when you dress specifically for, the cameras, you will get photographed by certain people, but maybe you might not get photographed by the person you were hoping to be photographed by.
Mhm, mhm,
I'm not saying that getting photographed by me is that big of a deal, but the thing is, um, I mean, you just never know where the photos are going. So I think a lot of people see it as an opportunity to market themselves. So like,
mhm,
there's a lot of people that just show up, get photographed, and don't even go into the show.
mhm,
And
mm.
if that if that's their agenda, great for them.
Well, what about people, like, in real life? People who might be listening and they're like, "Oh my god, like, he's a style arbiter and he" I mean, you have made trends and you're a fashion editor more than, like, real fashion editors, basically. Took a while for people like us to realize, but I think everyone else knew. So, like, what is that certain something, or can you even quantify it? Just for something everyone wants to just get dressed, they're going to a dinner party, they're going to wherever, regular people.
I mean, I react to someone that's very visually charismatic, but the thing is, I honestly think that if you live in this bubble where you're not concerned about being documented or being seen or going viral, then I think that's just the way to go because, the people that are just don't even think about those little things are the ones that interest me. Like sometimes, like in Milan or Paris, you'll see an older woman that's very chic in the way that she's wearing like a vintage fur or whatever, and she's carrying maybe two bags rather than just one. It's the little things that capture my interest now, but maybe that's just me saying that because I've seen so much that
Mhm,
I don't I don't need to be baited by a formulaic way of dressing. It's just
mhm,
I think what I respond to most is when someone has a very innate personal sense of style.
mhm,
And the thing is, not everyone is for everyone, and it doesn't matter. But the thing is, I do capture a lot of different aspects of style. So like I do love going to the Rick Owens show and capturing those people. And some people may not expect that of me, but I love capturing these different types of communities because style exists on all forms of the spectrum. We don't all have to look polished and refined and pretty. Like I think there's a lot of respect for someone that just follows their instinct and just wants to just march the beat of their own drum, so
mhm, mhm. And so where do you go like, where does someone let you go from here? I mean, obviously, you're still doing your thing, but, like, you were there, you were one of the founders. There are a lot of people. Are you still doing a lot of street style? What are you doing more now? And where do you see yourself in the future?
I'm still doing the same thing I was doing at the very beginning. I still go to every show and I skip, London, Milan now, but, I've amassed a large archive, so I'm working, I've said this many times, but I'm working on a big book project,
Oh, wow. That would be
but I'm
very exciting.
treating it like as if I'm printing, photo books. I feel like there's a bigger story to be told, so
Like, the bigger story of how street style influenced fashion?
that and how digital media and fashion
Good.
enters, and I'm trying to visually illustrate all this change that happened.
Wow. It
Yeah.
really flip-flop it turned things on his head. It's their head, and I think it's people like you who don't shoot everybody and who have a very particular way of looking at things, and, who I mean, I respect all street style photographers, and everyone has their I mean, I don't know. There were just you really have an identifiable, eye and a certain level of taste or an eye, and you don't shoot everything and you don't shoot every shiny carrot. I mean, I don't know. I don't really look so much anymore, but back then, which was even more indicative of what your style is and what your taste level is, and how people can learn about personal style from your images, I think is so much more relevant than just showing like the actual pieces or just I think it's really notable, so that would be great to see that from you.
Thank you. I mean, it's never about the obvious thing. I think people assume it's all about wearing the latest thing or being done up perfectly. I just feel like, from a contextual and anthropological standpoint, there's just a bigger story to be told in terms of how style or street style has really, impacted fashion, but you throw into the equation these different platforms of how we digest and process fashion. So, like, we used to go and buy magazines, maybe log on to a website like style.com, but the thing is now fashion is so instant in that it's being presented to us right away on our phones. That sense of anticipation or just seeking out things is just different, and we're so bombarded by so much information that it doesn't feel as precious as it used to. So, um I mean, yeah, we carry two different worlds where we carry a world prior to social media. Now we're living in a world with social media. So I think for people that didn't get to live in that world, it'd be interesting for them to understand how fashion has changed because of.
Oh, that's cool. Oh, good. Okay. Yeah. I mean, it is. Geez, you can look at it in so many different ways, but
There's so many
I
ways of
think it's
looking at
such a
them.
great. I think it's a total part of fashion history. Just
Yeah.
like I used to think, "Oh my gosh, but I've seen McQueen since, you know, 2000 and blah blah blah, and I can really, when I know his inspiration." Oh, that's another thing I remember thinking like, "Oh my gosh, but they're not seeing the liner notes, and they're not going back to the showroom, and they don't know the story about this or that." It was so interesting, like how up our butts we kind of were. And that was a moment in time. That was a moment for sure in time. And I would go back to the Prada showroom, and I'm a like a Mucha junkie like you. Like I would just be so into the PR people used to say, like, there's only one person who asks as many questions and stays as long as you, and that's Grace. Um, but yeah, I totally God, it's revolutionized everything, and it has democratized. And there's certain people who have made a visual impact, just like Inez and Vinood's photography, or David Sims, or Mario Sorrenti, or Richard Avedon. Like, you guys have impacted. You're like the combination of the editors and the photographers. But wow. And so how do you stay motivated after all these years?
I would say just remind yourself of why you love doing what you're doing. I mean, I still love it to a certain degree, otherwise I wouldn't still do it. But I have to say when people ask me if I still love fashion, I tell them I don't love fashion, I like clothes. And that's the and it is sad to say that I've fallen out of love with fashion just
Mhm.
because, like I said, I was able to experience fashion prior to social media like a normal person would. And now that, you know, I don't want to say I'm bored with it, but the thing is it's just too much.
Mhm.
And that for me to say that I yearn for the simpler things in life and wanting to go into a shop and feel inspired by touching the clothes, that's such a rarity because now we just shop online.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I think fashion has changed in so many ways that it's has made us question, our relationship with fashion and
Mhm.
what type of relationship we want to
Mhm.
have with fashion. So,
I completely agree, and I think I've been a little afraid to say that. I've been a little afraid to say that out loud because you work in fashion, I work in fashion, and I've been afraid, like I said, to say that. So I really give you credit. And again, I don't, you have like this confidence, which is, you're resolute in how you feel. You're resolute in your tastes and your decisions and what you've done and what you're doing. And like I said, getting into it and following your heart and all that. How do you have the resolve to, like, what do you think is next then?
I wish I had the answer to that
Yeah,
because
like, where does it go? I mean, I feel the same. I still love making pictures. I love
yeah,
being on photo shoots.
yeah.
I love models. I love everything. But I love, like you, I love the clothes or the style. I mean, I've always been a Prada junkie, so that's been hard to like get me excited about a lot of other things. But yeah, we'll see.
You know what? It's become harder because, we come from different generations where, this is what we dedicated our lives to, you know, to to do, and these are our job is our passion basically, and it's not just a job. We live and breathe fashion.
Mhm.
So for so much of the traditions to be dismantled and for fashion to cycle at such a faster pace that it doesn't make it seem, you know, comforting, and it's not as pleasurable as it used to. It just feels like, oh, the demand is so much more because everything is this going to be viral? We have to shoot the look from head to toe. It has to be specifically shot like this, and like, oh, the budgets aren't the same. Like, it just makes you question, like, how did this change so quickly, and like, why does this not feel fun anymore?
Mhm.
And the thing is, or do I feel like I have a job that's secure anymore? So like, a lot of people in creative industries are now questioning whether or not they can still hold on to their job, or whether or not they'll still get a job, you know? So
Mhm.
it's sad that
Mhm.
we're having this realization that, what we fondly love so much about this industry has made us question even our livelihood. So
Mhm.
that's that's the fear and anxiety that I deal with just as much as everyone else does in this industry, is just
Mhm.
not knowing what's gonna happen next, especially with AI, and the priorities are totally different now.
Mhm.
So
I mean, hopefully, like, taste, art, appreciation, I do think with vintage, really on the rise, like, that makes me
yeah,
happy because I have so many Prada skirts I've spent so much money on. But, I'd love to see people wearing things that aren't necessarily came down the runway 2 minutes ago. My Prada skirt is just as fucking fabulous as it was all that, those years ago, and I think I only wore it for, like, 1 season, even back then,
even more
but
fabulous, I think so, than what's new, because there's memories attached to it, or there's references and inspiration attached to it. I'm not discrediting what's being put down the road right now, but there was more storytelling involved, and it wasn't thinking, oh, maybe if we brand this skirt with with our logo or the triangle, it's going to sell more. It's more about pushing product now.
Mhm.
So, to give more credit to Mrs. Prada, like, I feel like her collections prior to a certain time told more of what was in here,
Mm.
and I understand from a company standpoint, the bottom line is how much more can we sell? So, obviously, there has to be this mindset of, well, if we place the logo in, you know, s
Like when they did the tank top,
with with the
which I,
signature.
like an asshole, bought, like
I mean, no, we as fashion people, but at the same time, we realize, oh, we're becoming victims to this, of how fashion is no longer about, the artistry and the creativity of the garment. It's about like, oh, how do we make people understand or notice that we're wearing something that's evidently product,
Mhm,
And
mhm.
that's what's changed in design now. That the fact that product is designed to not necessarily be beautiful, but it's like, how does this be noticed more?
Mm.
Obviously on social media, but obviously on the street. I want people to know that this is Prada, not necessarily because of the Christoph Schemann print, or
Yes.
fancy embroidery. It's about how do we get the product across in terms of being very noticeable to a larger audience. So that's the sad thing about what's happened to fashion. And I
Mhm.
and I do praise your collection of skirts that you are holding on to, because you will be more noticed by the right people that will be like, "Oh, you have that skirt? Of course you do, because you connected to that collection in that particular moment, and I can't believe that you're holding on to it." And
Yeah.
and those are the moments I really savor when I see, a stylist wearing a lot of Nicola Jesquier Balenciaga
Oh
from, like, the 2000s.
God.
So
Do
the
you know,
fact that
like, I have those pants, like, and I'm like, every time
which
I put
pants?
them on, they're like, well, first of all, I have an original, like,
The
moto bag.
cargos?
The cargos, yeah. I don't have
Some
the
screenshot.
God, you're so good. I have them in black, though. I mean, I could not get a hold of them
You
in
have the black
olive.
ones, okay.
Yeah, I
I
couldn't
have
get the whole.
the green ones are impossible to find, but yeah, that's the thing, like, that collection just came out of nowhere,
Ugh.
but it plays such a huge part of fashion history because, it was just something that was just completely different, but also just set a whole new trend, and those moments rarely happen anymore where a designer is able to create a collection that just, takes its time, obviously, to filter through the masses, but everything is so instant now that everyone has to become part of the conversation and has to wear it right away.
Well, then they all, like, are spinning around, like, I mean, I thought what Alessandro was doing at Gucci was, like, amazing, like,
And
you
I
know
remember you wearing that flame bag, but wearing it in the Alessandro way, whereas now it's totally different because, that organic sense of a designer being able to put out like a message and seeing it influence the way that people wanna dress, that rarely happens in fashion,
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
feel, because that instantaneousness of everything just being showcased and publicized and just worn right away, it leaves very little opportunity for a designer to put out a message out there that will influence and change the way people wanna dress.
Mhm. Mhm. There's not like that time given
Yeah.
to let them like based. Do you know what I mean? Like, so to rock him out so soon, I was like, that's not so great because he was able to do what he did there. And maybe he didn't do like, every designer wants to get the handbag that's going to sell everything and float the rest of the ready to wear. But, so, well, I mean, it was great. When it was going on, it's still great to see that you're around. I think that your taste is, thank God that you're still doing what you're doing because I think that you are like one of the icons and to see you spearhead and have the guts to stay in, to just do what you're doing and stand out there and like at the beginning, did people not want to pose for you?
I mean, I have photos back then of asking specific people, "Oh, can I please stop and take your photo?" And it was totally fine. But obviously, when you go to a fashion show now, you just don't know where these photos are going. So I feel like
Yeah.
a lot of fashion people are more less inclined to want to have their photo taken. And
Mhm.
that's why, maybe that's why fashion insiders have taken more of a backseat in terms of the interest for fashion photographers because they're not dressing to be noticed. They're just dressing for themselves,
Mhm.
which I find fascinating. But
Yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
for an average person that shows up with their camera thinking, "Oh, I'm gonna capture all these glamorous people," and they look at fashion people, they're like, "Oh, they're just wearing
Oh
all
my
black."
god, I know. They're like, yeah, super boring. Well,
Little do
listen.
they know, it's about that Alaya bag that she's carrying with that specific Saint Laurent coat or whatever.
Right, right. Well,
So
listen,
that's
I
I'm a nerd.
what?
That's why I'm a nerd because 'cause I'll notice those things.
I think it's great. I think it's great for people to have that fashion history and be able to and you're like the double entendre, like you have the fashion history and then you've seen this historic shift
Yeah.
to social media and street style really driving the boat instead of fashion magazines. It's fascinating. I'm really hoping that that will happen from you and that we can see it. I'm here to motivate you and do whatever I can to promote that. But and then finally, the only thing I want to have to ask you is that because you have such resolve and you're so calm and you have such a unique way about you. Why are you like that? Were you raised in a really good family, like a together? Were your parents still together? Like, why do you have so much confidence? Or where does your inner resolve come from? I mean, obviously it's in with you, but did you have like a really good upbringing?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very close to my family. I mean, not to put my family down, but I feel like my mother lives in fear constantly.
Mm,
My parents won't ever leave the house.
mm,
I mean, my brother and my older brother and sister live very simple lives, so, me being this person that I am today, just it's me confronting the world and understanding that, uh, there's no need to compete with all the noise and just I was actually listening to a very short clip that John Mayer was talking about, when he was trying to understand like, fashion or what's currently trendy with Gen Z or Gen Alpha, and
mm-hmm,
the thing is, you just don't understand, just recuse yourself because there's no point of putting your negativity out because just let it be, and the thing is you were young once, so the thing is everyone deals with things in a different way, so
mm-hmm,
for me, yes, I've gotten older, but the thing is I don't need to put my 2 cents out there for everything, I rather just be I mean, I love being an observer, I'd rather just stand back and observe,
mm-hmm,
and when the time comes where I do need to make my point, which I do sometimes, it'll be welcome, but
mm-hmm,
I don't know, I just think life's too short to make yourself feel like you need to be wrapped up in drama or whatever.
mm-hmm. Wow. Okay. Well, that's the best way to end it because I think that this is really about, it's about fashion and using the sparkle of fashion to really shine the light on, mindset, spiritual practices. I mean, I've interviewed Inez and Manuz and they're like, we meditate. Or Inez is like, I go in the bathroom and meditate for 20 minutes in the middle of a shoot. Or like, there's a Patty DeBroff who did this and that. But you just, what I think what you said is like, so what such a good mantra for people to live by, and certainly people who are obsessed with fashion and get really insecure about what they're wearing. It's just really a bummer that people get so nervous about it.
Yeah.
It's just like be yourself, just the exact words that you said, and being yourself, and realizing that someone who could have the best style would notice someone who isn't like wearing all the
Yeah. Of
perfect things. So Tommy, thank you so much for taking your time to be with
course.
me. I
Thank you.
really feel honored. You are a legend and have done so much, and I appreciate you hanging in there, and especially through all the cold and rain and not eating, and the cold and the rain and not eating. Like, I don't know how you guys do it. So thank
I
you
would
so
not have
much.
ended there. Thank you.
Wow. And I'm glad we have your images around to look back on, just like we would look back on old Mizell or old Avedon, for certain ideas. And I think people will continue to be inspired by your images and um, the style, the style that you showed. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye bye.